come out. I'm Miriam Galway. I'm a planner with Labella Associates as a part of the project team working on Rensselaer Rising. I'm here with Norabelle, also a planner with Labella, and Mary Moore. And we have Tom and Amy from the City Planning Department.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. So I'm going to start off by talking through, I'm sorry, thank you. Be a lot in the library. I'm going to start off by walking through the Rensselaer Rising project, and then we're going to talk at the end a little bit about how it transitions into the DRI application that the city's working on. So the city will speak to that at the end. And we'll also talk through how we've gotten to this point, a little bit about what the Rensselaer Rising project is, some of the public outreach that we've done so far, and then we'll move into, from that public outreach and from the work we've been doing with the committee, what goals, the vision, and the recommendations that we've developed so far. And then we'll also walk through the concept plan draft that we've developed for the project, and then we'll give you guys the opportunity to kind of take a look at what we've done so far and get your feedback on these draft recommendations and the concept plan. So we started the Rensselaer Rising process a little over a year ago. It is funded through the New York State Brownfield Opportunity Area Program through the New York State Department of State. And the city received a grant to develop this project. And the BOA program is focused on working with communities and identifying those issues and topics that are making development in the city challenging or are hindering development or investment into the city. And so the approach we take is to evaluate what those issues and opportunities are in the city, evaluate what the strengths are, what there might be opportunities to focus on, and then identifying where those issue areas are. And through that process, we establish a vision for the city's future. We identify priority sites and areas within the city for new development or for a new vision or new ideas. And then we develop recommendations for investment and revitalization. And that ends in coming up with recommendations, which you'll see today, alongside a concept plan, which focuses on kind of those priority sites and key areas in the city, alongside policy recommendations to accompany it. And then as Tom and Amy will talk about, the city plans on leveraging this planning work to apply for some funding to start really investing in some of the key priority projects of the city and start seeing that investment in the planning process and in projects come to a reality. So this is just a timeline of what we've been working on. We really kicked off heavily last fall through the winter, doing kind of an inventory and data analysis for the city, kind of on the data collection side. And then in the winter, we took that to the public and started getting feedback through public engagement surveys and public engagement events. We used that public feedback in the spring into the summer to start developing and identifying strategic sites and starting to do that property owner outreach. So a huge part of this process is having these great ideas and visions for strategic sites, but making sure that those property owners are keyed in on the process and invited into the process to get their buy-in and their ideas for the city. Now, as we're in the summer and into the fall, which I can't believe it's October already, we are now in that recommendation and plan development stage. So what you'll see here today are some of our draft ideas for those recommendations and the plan, and now we're looking for feedback on those and how we can hone them a little bit more specifically. This is a little blurry, I'm sorry, I just realized that. The map on the right is the study area. So as you can see, it's not the entire city that makes up the study area for the Rensselaer Rising BOA project. It does encompass the Riverfront Park. We've got the Amtrak station down to the Fort Craylow neighborhood. So it really focuses on the downtown core of the city. As I mentioned, a significant part of this process was to get public engagement and public buy-in, and to really understand what the community is looking for to develop these visions, goals, and recommendations. The entire process was led by an advisory committee. The list of who's on that is on the right. We tried to make sure that the committee represented an important cross-section of the community, and they helped us to guide discussions and give feedback on ideas, recommendations throughout the process, and connected us to people throughout the planning process that could give us good insight. In addition to the committee, we used several different forms of public engagement. We had a survey that was open through the winter, and that was focused on the visioning stage of the process, getting people's feedback on what they would like to see for the city, what they view as the most challenging issues that face the city right now, what some of those key strengths of the city already are, and what they would like to see going forward. We've also had several other public engagement that we've used. We ended up doing several focus group meetings with community members, property owners, business owners. We had specific property owner interviews with several of the major property owners in the area. And then we attended some local events. We were at Rensselaer Night Out, which was great. Got to talk to a lot of the kids at that event, see what they wanted to see for the city of Rensselaer. And then a couple weeks ago, we were at the farmers market with a table. And so when you go around, you'll see some dots already on the board. That's from the farmers market feedback. We thought it would be helpful to kind of continue the momentum of what people were already thinking about. So see if you agree with them as you go. Through all this public engagement, we identified 5 main themes that we heard from a lot of members of the community. The first is access to fresh food and groceries. This came up almost every time we did public engagement, and every time I say it, I get lots of head nods from the community. We understand that this is a major concern, especially with the closure of Aldi. We see this as a major issue in the city, as it's like a food desert now. So kind of figuring out ways to address that gap. The second was the need to attract unique shops and restaurants to really identify that downtown core and improve that downtown core. There's already some great businesses there. How do we attract more? The third most pressing issue that came up was improving access to the Hudson River waterfront. Again, there's a beautiful park there already. How can we increase access to the waterfront and improve access to the waterfront? Fourth was improvements to existing building facades. Again, making that more identifiable downtown that you really want to go to and spend time in. And the fifth was parks and recreational facilities and programs, just more events in the city. We heard from a lot of people, we wish there was more stuff to go to, or we knew more about what's already going on. We wish that it was marketed more to us. So those were the 5 main things that we heard. We also heard a lot about strengths and opportunities. A lot of the strengths we heard were focused on how much already is great about this city. There's so much potential. There's so much connectivity to local areas around the city of Rensselaer. You're so close to Albany. You've got that great skyline view. The Hudson River front is right there. There's already, like I said, some great businesses, local businesses. It's already got a small town feel that people appreciate, and access to the Amtrak station, which is the 8th busiest in the country. So there are tons of people coming into the city. On the other hand, though, it's hard to keep those people that come into the city here. And so how do we start having those people come and make the experience better for visitors, but also residents? So some of the opportunities that we heard a lot were the need for more businesses, grocery stores, restaurants, cafes, all the stuff that, like I said, makes you want to spend more time where you live. We also heard more entertainment, public events, like I already mentioned, the identifiable business district, and the need for funding for these projects. So again, all of these ideas are phenomenal. We understand how great the city is already, but how do we start funding those projects and turning the ideas into reality? So from all this public engagement, we've developed with the committee, and based on the public engagement, a project vision, goals, and recommendations. This is the resulting project vision. It's a little bit wordy, so I won't go through the whole thing. But that first sentence there says, the city of Rensselaer aspires to build on its existing, unique, walkable riverfront community to become one of the most attractive places to live in the Northeast, with a beautiful and accessible waterfront, active downtown, and convenient transportation connections both within the city and to other regional communities. So the vision is this forward-thinking idea for what the community can look like in the future. And then from that vision that we developed, we start working on goals and recommendations on how to achieve that. So the 5 main goals that have been developed for the plan, the first is establishing an identifiable and thriving downtown. The second is enhancing the Hudson River waterfront. The third is highlighting and marketing existing community assets. 4 is improving connectivity and promoting multimodal transit. And then 5 is ensuring access to community services, especially fresh food and groceries. So as you can see, we tried to take what we heard from the public and hone it into those 5 main goals. From those goals, we developed specific recommendations for each one. This is what we'll be asking for your feedback on the boards on the left there. So they're broken up into each of those 5 goals, and we're going to ask you to rank what you think they are, whether you think they're a high priority, a medium priority, and low priority. We also have a space there, it's a little bit small, but feel free to put sticky notes on there if you think we're missing anything, if you think that something doesn't reflect how you feel about the community, or it could use any other details. We appreciate that feedback. So I'll run through the recommendations kind of on a general level, at a high level. If you have any questions, we have some more detail in front of them, and we'll be around to answer any questions as well. So for goal 1, establishing an identifiable and thriving downtown, we think this can be done kind of through 2 phases. The first is through promotion of economic development, and the second prong of it, I guess not phases, more prongs, is aesthetic improvements. So the recommendations under this are focused on updating zoning, land use regulations, and enhancing design standards. So that's that kind of legal side of the recommendations, making sure that new development follows those zoning guidelines that the city thinks are in line with its vision. Revitalizing vacant and underutilized sites, that's a main point of this project, is to focus in on those key sites in the city that are underutilized, abandoned, or vacant that could use improvement. 3 is optimizing property sales and management. This just means when a property goes up for sale, making sure that future development is in line with, again, the city's vision and its goals, according to, like I said, those zoning regulations and the design standards. Addressing floodplain and environmental risks. Much of our study area is in the floodplain, and so making sure that we accommodate that and consider that in new development. It can be expensive to develop in a floodplain, so how do we mitigate some of those challenges? Considering alternate uses for existing spaces, creating and implementing a branded aesthetic for the downtown. So like I said, helping to really identify where you are. Downtown Albany has that, I'm sure you've seen, with just signs that say you're in downtown, which is always helpful. And then implementing streetscape enhancements. For enhancing the Hudson River waterfront, these are a little more self-explanatory. The first, increasing public access and use of the Hudson River front. A lot of that is focused on the significant park area. And with the Hudson River waterfront, on that back table there, you'll see 3 pages of visual preference surveys. Those are more focused on the park area. So as part of this project, we'll also be developing some concept plans for specific sites in the community. And we're just looking for your feedback on your preference of what those things look like. So you'll see lots of different images, and if you just want to place a dot on your favorite ones, some of them are just visual preferences, some of them are some activities that you'd like to see. So that's that back table. The other recommendations for enhancing the Hudson Riverfront are promoting and supporting riverfront development, so beyond the park, and improving and maintain riverfront amenities. Highlighting and marketing existing community assets. This one really speaks to, like we mentioned, there are so many great strengths already in the city, so many great events happening, and really just making sure that those are marketed well to the public. This one also speaks to the Amtrak station, how to kind of optimize the visitor experience when you come here on the Amtrak. So having more wayfinding signs, or really showing people who are visiting what they can go do in the city. Improving connectivity and promoting multimodal transit. That's a lot of words to just say, how do we help people get to where they are in whatever mode of transportation they use. So focusing on improving connectivity and trail networks, so people walking and biking. The Empire State Trail already runs through the city, so how can we make that more appealing, that section of the trail more appealing to the community? Strengthening multimodal transit connections, so train, bus, car, walking, biking, improving all those connections. The last is ensuring access to community services. This is especially fresh foods and groceries. So finding creative ways to attract and develop grocery and fresh food locations, expanding and supporting local food access programs, but then also how to support daycare models that serve the city population, ensuring transportation access, and increasing access to programming for the youth of the community to maybe to connect to jobs in the area. There's a lot of different trades in the city already, and how to connect them to jobs and internships and activities. So those are the recommendations. That was a lot of information. Like I said, if you have any questions as you go around, feel free to ask. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Moore to walk through the concept plan. This is the next phase of the plan. Do you want me to zoom in?
Might be a good idea, yeah, we can start with. So we look at 2 different concept plans. The first one is the one that's most relevant to this project. That's more of a short-term plan, and then we took a sort of wish list, long-term view, just because with what's happening with 787 being up in the air and all the different possibilities, we wanted to just take a look at, you know, what could the possibilities be here if a lot of that infrastructure and the separations there went away. So this is taking a look at some of the vacant, underutilized sites that we saw and trying to think how you could maximize those and really use them to promote the goals and the vision that we just talked about. So I'll quickly just hit on some of the strategy here. So a lot of this was taking a look at, because there's a lot of, as we all know, there's a bunch of surface parking in Rensselaer and.
Excuse me, could you speak up?
Sorry, there's a lot of surface parking in Rensselaer, so really looking at, and you still, you know, we're not at the point yet where we can exist without cars, so how do you strike a balance and try to pair development with opportunities where you might be able to stack some of the parking, which can also help provide a use that works well if you're in a floodplain condition, but also where do you concentrate that development so it'll be most effective? So what we try to do is take a look at, okay, what's closest to the railroad tracks is what it is. The tracks are there, there's not much we can do about it. So if we're gonna have to have parking, let's keep that close to the railroad tracks or the backs of larger sites. And let's see if we can bring as much development as we can out to those street walls. So we can begin to restore and repair that grid in that sense that makes the community feel more walkable, that if you're visiting, makes you wanna keep going because you see, oh, there's a coffee shop over there, or oh yeah, I need this. And so it increases that dwell time, it encourages you to want to step out of your car or step out of the door. The Amtrak station is amazing, the amount of asphalt, the sidewalks, the islands, everything in or outside of the station is asphalt. So there's probably some pretty simple surface treatments that you could do that would make, are the difference between, yep, there's no reason for me to walk out of this station, or, oh, cool, I wonder what's around the corner. So just thinking about different treatments we can do to really promote people spending time in Rensselaer to increase economic opportunity for the people, because you do have a lot of people who are coming into the station, who are coming in to go to work at the New York State Child and Family Services building. You've got people that are coming for events in the park. So how do we get people to come and stay longer than just going to the one thing that they're going to? So when we look at this, probably the biggest move was looking at, we had a great meeting with the Capital District Transportation Authority, who actually owns most of the parking in the garage at the train station. And so they were very open to doing some kind of development on that site. And so what we looked at was doing a multi-story, multi-use building where instead of having all the parking just spread all over the surface, you could put in a couple decks of parking that would tie into the same levels as the existing parking garage. And then you could put on top of that, which would be at the street level, you could have a grocery store. And thinking that in terms of if you're going to have a grocery store, what can you do to increase the chances that it'll stay there, that it'll get enough business that you can attract and with the number of people coming and going from the train station, you've got a pretty great customer base built in right there. So you can come home from your train on the way to the car, get whatever you need for your groceries that evening, and then it's also there and available for residents, and you can tie it to the street wall so it's easier to get to and more appealing. And then you could put above that you have a couple floors of residential, and then you've got those great views that look out over the water of Albany, and it increases that pedestrian activity. And then the other thing we looked at with that was strengthening the bridge. It's not super wide, there's only so much you can do, but there's a lot of bridges that are very similar, where just having some baskets of flowers like mounted on the walls, maybe some banners, some things that really kind of strengthen that connection so that the railroad is less of a divide and the bridge is more of a connection to the downtown area. We did also look at doing a little bit of additional residential up here. As we've been looking into it, we think we could actually do even more, but again, just trying to reconnect to the residential that's happening across the street and knit those areas back together. Then we did also look at there's a lot of parking owned by the New York State Child and Family Services building, and so there's another one on this corner, that's not as heavily utilized. So looking at taking a building, pulling it to the bridge and the street to again shorten the distance of how long that bridge feels like when you're on it, to bring some mixed use back down to the street level. We also thought with the Boys and Girls Club next door, that would be a great place where you could potentially pair like some kind of daycare into the back one of the lower levels, so have retail on the corner and then maybe some kind of childcare on the ground level, and then you could have residential housing above that. And then there's another parcel across the street where we met with the developer, and he was interested in also doing some mixed use residential there as well. So again, just sort of restoring that street wall to make it more walkable and encourage people to keep going. We also looked at doing a gateway up here. You've got so many people living at Delete's Landing, but it's very vehicular when there's nothing that really says, hey, come walk into the, to Broadway. So we looked at creating a little bit of a pocket park there that would make it walkable, that would have some wayfinding, let you know about some of the cool things to do in Rensselaer, and encourage residents to leave and come into here where they can support the businesses. And we did also look at the mill is such an incredible building, and the fact that there's a canal system that goes under it, I think is something that you see that appeals to people in cities all over the Northeast. And you almost stumble upon it by accident. So really, and the waterway actually connects, through that parcel where there's a little bit of a park on the corner, but there's a lot of parking right now, and then it goes all the way through the park out to the Hudson River. So really looking at that as a fantastic opportunity to really celebrate the waterway, to do a walking connection to get you to and from, to create some good placemaking opportunities around this that could then support, encourage people to open up businesses in and around those spaces. And also really just looking at right now, the entry into this park is so big and has so much to offer, but with all the roads and the entry feels like it's about this big, and the majority of it is parking lot. So instead of just sort of making your parking become another wall that keeps you away from the park, how do you really sort of carry that stream feel and the park feel through the main entrance and tuck your parking into places where it's not interrupting the feel or the potential of the park? And even just talking to some of the farmers market vendors, you've got naturally covered space right up against the street, and right now they have the market inside the park, and I bet you 90% of the people who drive by have no idea there's even a farmers market happening in there. A couple of farmers I talked to were ready to pick their tent up and move that day. So just talking about the difference if they were to set up closer to the street, how much more exposure there would be, and how doing events that utilize that space would really make it easier for people to walk across the street or down the street, and you get more economic impact from those events. So that was what we looked at there. We also looked at possibly doing another small residential building that could have some parking decked underneath along the road by the Child and Family Services, where you come down off the hill, just again to sort of frame it, create that sense that you're arriving in the downtown, provide some more housing opportunities, and looking to also just kind of take advantage of that. This dash is the Empire State Trail, and so we would create a connection from the train station. There's a really nice landscape area there where you could have a nice direct connection to and from the Empire State Trail to the train station. And it could also be part of sort of a nicer walking loop that you could market. And we also had a great conversation with Amtrak since then, who was also open to us showing some housing here as well. So those two could be paired together nicely. And then there's a few parcels along Broadway where there's not much happening right now, where we thought there was enough opportunity to put sort of another small mixed use building with, again, trying to keep the parking pulled to the backs of the sites. And does it have what's below that, or is that? Oh, that's on that. Okay. So then looking below that, especially this corner on Columbia, trying to get some kind of a mixed use building there where you could pull it a little closer to the street. to again, get some height, get us, you know, the buildings right now, it's so much, there's so much vehicular oriented use along that corridor, so really thinking about, you know, how can you get uses out here that begin to sort of knit these two areas back together and again, create that sense of arrival and encourage you to turn in instead of just to keep going. And then looking at working with property owners all along, that stretch, just to put in landscape buffers, and so that's the thing that you can do with your design standards. The difference of just having the car pull all the way up to the sidewalk versus just having a required minimal green space could make all the difference in the world in terms of like how that feels and how fast people feel like they should be driving on it, and whether you get a sense that you're coming to a place where you wanna slow down and stop. And then looking for some other gateway opportunities out here to kind of clue people into the opportunities that exist here. And then looking at the long-term picture, should this go away? And there's a lot of different iterations, and some of them, all of it goes away, some of it goes away. There's a bit, we just took a look at if the sky was the limit, what could you do? And thinking about really kind of capitalizing on that waterfront access with that park, possibly keeping some of the remnants of the infrastructure just to have pedestrian scale bridges across this waterway, and framing it so you could have really big events here, but then having opportunities for mixed use and housing, again, just hiding the parking in the middle, so you're sort of celebrating the connection to the street on one side and the connection to the water on the other side. And just trying to think about, you know, how can you really get more residents in here who will then have more dollars to spend in the community, and it'll generate more opportunities for businesses to thrive. And so again, just really strengthening the street wall there, trying to create new buildings that provide opportunities for retail and some new areas without, we didn't want to disturb too much the areas where the existing businesses are doing okay, because you don't want to price them out before other things happen. So really looking for new opportunities to add on to that without displacing some of the really great things that are happening already. And so I think that was the main thing here. Again, you know, it is the floodplain, so you'd have to think about, you know, you probably would have some parking underneath and have sort of set places where you had some key restaurants on the corner that were properly flood-proofed, or you had some interesting, like, creative ways to get up to the first level where you're above that floodplain level. And then there's, you know, enormous opportunity for some interesting, like, rooftop stuff happening as well. So that's the gist of it. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And that where your future, when you're replacing the Dunn Memorial Bridge, you're gonna be getting rid of the tennis courts and basketball courts?
That wouldn't necessarily have to happen. I mean, this is just kind of a long-term vision in terms of if that disappeared.
And I think, you know, one other item on that, I know you came in a little bit after Mira had given some of the introductions. Some of what the programming might be for that park is exactly what we're looking for feedback on today. And so we have some sheets in the back with questions about, you know, what would you like to see in the park long term? And so hearing, you know, whether those are key things for the community is really what we're here for today.
Yeah, I mean, some of them, and a lot of this is just big open green space that could be programmed however you wanted it to. But the reality is, if they're gonna take those roadways out, the basketball court's gonna have to get redone. So at that point, you might as well put the basketball court in the best place to have it.
And one other thing that we did hear in terms of interest, and you have it called out here for that waterfront park, is potential for an amphitheater, some sort of performance space with, you know, looking at the Albany skyline behind as well, which would be a really cool, exciting thing to have in the community.
Wait, are they talking about doing away with that bridge entirely?
Yes.
They are,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't know if they was connecting, they're gonna have to
They're
have,
looking at all
they're gonna have to have some way of getting
That bridge is
the two
going.
sides.
Yeah,
The bridge
it
is-
They're gonna
kind of
replace
needs
it,
to
but they don't
go.
know where
It
yet.
is
It
going.
needs to what?
They're gonna replace it, but
They're
they're
gonna
not sure
replace it
where.
somewhere,
Yeah.
that's right, okay.
It might be further
So-
south, it might be a little south.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah.
scenarios where it's way over
That might
here,
be
there's
right.
some where it's over here, there's some where some of the ramps stay and some of them go away. And
Yeah, it's a very up in the air at the moment
Yeah,
on that, so
right.
that's why we want, this is the long-term vision.
But Columbia Turnpike is the arch down at the bottom.
Down here, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And, and the other thing I forgot to mention, so with this
Okay,
one,
yes, it
we
goes.
looked at this very long-term,
That's cool.
you know, trying to encourage mixed-use residential, especially in this area that's between the two residential neighborhoods. So you begin to really reconnect those two areas, create an atmosphere that's much more walkable here where you're closest to the downtown. This looked, you'd end up having a lot more road than you would need at that point, so you could do a nice tree-lined boulevard in the middle, and again, really emphasize the fact that you're in Rensselaer, you've arrived somewhere, direct people to the businesses, and have that residential on both sides, so it's very natural and comfortable to walk from one side to the other.
For your mixed-use residential, how are you conceptualizing affordable housing, thinking about our seniors and other under-resourced communities?
That's definitely something that's been part of the conversation. At this level concept plan, we're more thinking massings at the, right now. I think it's definitely something to think of long-term. There's a lot of housing coming to Rensselaer and
You will
long-term.
come up in the DRI.
Oh, perfect, okay.
Okay,
That'll
perfect.
come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, again, this is massing, but it's definitely been, and
Well,
we've
why
been
is
trying to
this
show.
image out of focus?
We're sorry for that. We don't know what is happening with the projector, but we
Yeah.
have a paper version as well, so you can come up close over here after. If you're,
So
Yeah,
do you have do you have a handout of what this picture is?
We don't have a handout, so I was just gonna
You're
say.
referring to an image that's out of focus, right, and all this writing is.
Yeah, so we have it here. I was just gonna say, maybe it would be helpful if, cause I want you guys to all have time to kind of walk through the board, so if you have questions on the concept plan, maybe Miriam, or if you wanna stick with these boards and answer questions as people have them, cause this has the writing obviously much clearer, it's just hard to see on this small image, so, maybe if we want to kind of, I'll let Tom and Amy talk about DRI stuff, and then if everyone's okay with that, we can move to people looking at boards, does that work? Sorry, I didn't get cut off.
I'm gonna borrow the library's easel.
Okay, can you get it up
I
there?
think so.
do you wanna turn this off?
That'd be great.
Interesting to see, 'cause the Yankee Bridge sounds.
As Mirren said, I'm Tom Houlihan, I'm the planning director for the city of Rensselaer, and I wanna give the, Rensselaer Rising, BOA people a real hand. So their program, we've been working on this for over a year, we've got some great ideas and some great concepts, and it's gonna be wrapping up by the early part of next year. In August of every year, around August of every year, the state also puts out a notice of available funding for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, and that's what we're gonna talk about now. We're fortunate that it's on the heels of the BOA study because that gave us a foundation of things that we wanna look at and things that we wanna work on. And it would have been ideal if the BOA was complete, because then we would just move into the DRI, but we're gonna do it now rather than wait till next year because it's too important of a project to get moving forward with. And so we looked at the BOA study,
The what study?
BOA, Brownfield Opportunity Area Study.
Ground.
The Rensselaer Rising study that we just talked about. And then we had some public engagement events, we had a survey, we had a couple of public meetings where we asked people, you know, what are the assets in Rensselaer now and how can we capitalize upon them? And they talked about things like the waterfront, which they did in the BOA as well, and the train station, which they did in the BOA as well. So based on that, for the revitalization plan, with this $10 million that the state would give us if we got the grant, we expanded the BOA area, which was this area right here, and extended it all along the waterfront up to the Hilton Boat Launch where Barnett Mills is being developed, where there's gonna be 72 new units of housing and 20,000 square feet of commercial space. And then went up to all along Broadway to have an upper Broadway and a lower Broadway, because there's already a lot of nice shops here already, and we can add more shops there. And then extended it over to East Street to capitalize on the train station and do some transit-oriented development around the train station, like the supermarket, and then back to Columbia Street. And then we put this board together and we went out to the public and we said, if this was our revitalization area, where would you like to see things like a grocery store, retail shops and boutiques, restaurants, more housing? and art and history displays. And people put the different colored stars where they would like to see things. You'll see a lot of yellow stars, cause everybody wants a grocery store, no matter where it is, and everybody probably wants it near their house. But they're all over the place, you know, especially where Aldi's used to be, that makes sense. Down in the downtown area, over near the train station, even down, on Lower Broadway, or Upper Broadway by mistake, and even further up on Upper Broadway. And then some people had ideas about doing more with the river here and the river here, and more different things around the train station. Simultaneous to doing the survey and doing this, we put a call out for proposals from developers, property owners, and community agencies, and asked them if the city had $10 million to give out, and you had a project that needed some gap funding, what would that project be, and how can we help you to achieve that? And from that, we got 18 proposals. Some are from private developers and public and private property owners. Some are from community agencies, and some are public improvement projects that the city would initiate, or the city in conjunction with CDTA or Amtrak. And the even though there's 18 projects, you see a lot more stars than that, because some things involve more than one component. Like over here in this wooded area here that Matt Pulcinello owns, he's talking about doing some mixed use development that will involve housing, retail, and restaurants. He's talking about as many as 300 apartments with restaurants and shops, as well as office space. The Leeds Landing is proposing another addition, another phase, 2 phases actually. One is gonna be townhome type buildings, 9 of them and 120 apartments. And then a 3-story building, or no, a 5-story building with a restaurant, and another 32 apartments. And then around the train station, we talked about all the things that we talked about in the BOA study. And then some interesting things along Broadway. And it all gets connected by the Empire State Trail, which Mary indicated which currently goes over the Dunn Bridge, adding a leg that goes to the train station, letting it cross Herrick Street down to Broadway, and then go down through Delete's Landing, where we got some interesting things going on at Delete's Landing, especially around the Esplanade, which is a public esplanade that people can go to, but not many people know about it because it's tucked away in Delete's Landing. So we're gonna open that up with the signage.
How do you spell Leeds Landing?
Delete's, DELAETS, apostrophe S.
DELAE.
Apostrophe S.
Wow.
And then there's gonna be a waterfront trail that we've already got the money for, and we were gonna start it this year, but then the state announced they were gonna be redoing the Livingston Avenue Bridge. So that, our waterfront trail that's gonna go from Delete's Landing, the Esplanade, all the way up to the Hilton Boat Launch is on hold until the state finishes Livingston Avenue Bridge. That Livingston Avenue Bridge is gonna have a shared use path, I have trouble with some of these phrases, but a shared use path that's going to go across the bridge over to Albany that people can walk or bike to. And then our waterfront trail, which connects this area to this area, is gonna ultimately, we're working with the county and the city of Troy and RPI, extending it all the way to Troy at some point.
Where the all-terrain vehicles now go.
Where the all-terrain vehicles and the train now goes. The train will probably still go there, unfortunately. We've got an outdoor gym plan for Delete's Landing. There's a visual of that. We just got $50,000 from the National Fitness Foundation, I think it is, to start that project. It costs a little bit more than that, but we're gonna put the other money for that into the grant. The housing developer up here and the Delete's Landing new future phases have committed to accepting applications from persons with tenant-based rental assistance vouchers and other subsidized vouchers when they're renting for new housing. So that's how we're gonna address the affordability issue for people going forward. And we'll ask that of new property owners as well when they're developing new housing. You know, will you commit to accepting Section 8 applications? They still need to go through the screening process and qualify to get into the housing, but, you know, they take the application and they're considered, and hopefully they meet all the qualifications and they get in. The existing downtown, a lot of things happening here, a lot of, a new, 4-story building going up with commercial on the ground floor, 5,000 square feet, and 24 units of housing above. Some facade improvements and other work happening along Broadway, renovating buildings, renovating the inside. The old bakery, that's a vacant building, it's been vacant for quite a while. The owner of that building wants to turn it into a coffee shop. And, Bill Brayton wants to build a 100-unit hotel with, 2 dining cars that are actually Pullman rail cars. Boys and Girls Club is looking for some projects, seed money as well. And the Herrick Street Bridge and the Broadway Bridge that people use to get to all these places. You know, unfortunately, the city is dissected by all these rail lines, and there's nothing we can do about that. And walking across long bridges can be boring, but along those bridges, there's those fences to keep people safe. And you can look out and watch the trains, but even that, you get tired of after a while. So on every 3rd or 4th panel of the fence, we're proposing to put up, interpretive signs that talk about the history of Rensselaer, things that happen in Rensselaer, with visual images as well as a little bit of the story. That can be something that residents stop and look at, visitors stop and look at, and learn a little bit more about the city. And I think that that's our vision for the DRI, the $10 million. Yes, sir.
I haven't heard anything yet about, promoting, the historical and cultural background of Rensselaer.
Yes, one of the things in the DRI, you're gonna get to evaluate all of our boards, our concept boards are out in the hallway. One of the, components of the DRI is a history walk, creating a map and maybe even an app that takes people, around the train station to going to all the historic sites. The place where the first Grand Slam was hit, Cralo Historic Site, where the aspirin was invented, Barnett Mills.
What about that Tracy Street building? That's a very old building.
That it would go up to, Tracy Street.
And Broadway.
Oh, yeah, right up here, yes.
Yeah, with
The
that's
stone
a very
building.
old building.
It's one of the oldest buildings in the city, yes. We could get a historic marker there to acknowledge that. Yes, ma'am.
I wonder if to really exploit and make money for Rensselaer in all sorts of ways, anyone has talked to or reached out has been made to Rensselaer City in terms of media.
Yes.
Because the one of the most lucrative things to have is media on the ground, using a historic area for all kinds of drama.
Yeah, okay.
And that can create all kinds of economic opportunities from every level.
So some performance space or something
So,
like
no,
that?
I'm talking about media, which means film,
Yeah.
digital media, people who do, up to people making films for, you know, film
Sure.
theaters, but as well as for TV channels. There's an awful lot of historical places Rensselaer could be used for.
Yeah.
You know, it can substitute for places that have been
Okay,
destroyed.
yes.
The
So
house I
doing
live
some
in was
filming
built
here.
by Sir
Yes.
Philip Hooker.
Yes,
You know?
yep,
I mean,
yes,
it's
that's something we can
It's on the
promote.
state and federal register,
Yeah.
and no one even knows that.
Right.
I get more calls from out of state, people say, can I come by and take a picture of your house?
Uh-huh.
Nobody in Rensselaer even knows it exists.
Right. I didn't know about the Cralo Historic Sites till I started working here a year
You
ago.
know the house I
And I've
live
been
in.
there a couple times so far, it's a beautiful building.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I agree. There is plans for a artist, studio space. I think 12 to 15 studio units for people to come and work on their art. It includes a podcast studio, and adjacent to it, right next door, is an event space for banquets. 100 seat banquet hall in the old Key Bank, I think it was Key Bank Library, or not library, bank, Key Bank Bank. And that will also include a place for an artist gallery to show art
Nice.
and a performance space.
One of my additional concerns is that, these are individual, projects.
Yes,
And there's no tie-in in terms of how things look.
yep. We're gonna link them all together with wayfinding signs throughout the community, showing people downtown is this way, the waterfront is this way. Go further up and there's a nice park.
Well, I'm thinking, over in Albany, they are spending lots of money to save like 2 historic Dutch buildings.
Yes,
We have Kralo
Mhm.
and, one other place, down at that end. But what about the downtown? Why can't that look, like Amsterdam or something?
that's the vision. Another part of the DRI that we're putting into the project is, $600,000 for small project improvements, facade improvements, storefront improvements, things like that, to resurrect this downtown as well as the, business community up here in the upper part of Broadway.
The Mill Creek area, what is gonna come of that? I mean, it's privately owned now, right?
Mill Creek, remind me.
Mill
Amy.
Creek runs from the Hudson under the Office of Family and Children's
Oh,
Services.
yeah, that is privately owned. We've been trying to get in touch with the owner in New York City that owns that, to figure out,
Perhaps if they could give it to Rensselaer, and then Rensselaer could beautify it, because it's a horrible mess right now. It's got children's toys
Yes.
floating in rusty tiles.
Mhm. The Hudson River Estuary Program just announced a grant today that we're gonna go after, and we're gonna try to work with that property owner to do some improvements there.
Yes. And people
To make more of a
happy
sitting
to-
park, more of a recreation area.
Yes.
Yes. It could be so beautiful.
So we've got a couple of activities that we wanna do in addition to the BOA activities. The state is proposing to give us $10 million if we are successful with this application. We've got actually the 18 projects that I talked about, they're valued at $300 million. The developers are only asking for a portion of that money, but it totals up to $16 million. So we want you guys to help us.
To talk to the merchant banks about their kind of financing, partly private, partly public.
Yes.
By the way, in London, they shifted from public financing only to a mixture. And it really helped London move forward, just with the London Eye Council.
We had a meeting yesterday with one local bank, and we're reaching out to another local bank to get their interest in helping to finance some of these projects, because the funding that we get from the state is reimbursement funding. So the state pays the money after the people do the project. So they're gonna need some loans
Yeah,
to
right,
do the
yeah.
construction work, yes, so we're meeting with banks about that in the back.
Yeah, you mentioned you had plans for a riverfront path. But
Yes.
you can't build it because eventually that Livingston Bridge is gonna be replaced, why
Not eventually, it's starting now. If you look down there, the cranes are there, the mayor and I got to walk where the path is gonna be. It's a phenomenal site, there's a couple of overlooks planned where you walk out and you can stand and actually there'll be benches there eventually, there's not now, and you can't go there now because it's a construction site. But there's gonna be benches and overlooks and places to look at the water.
Path on either
So-
side of it.
DOT originally, we had secured that, 3.2 million for that path, right below the Livingston Avenue Bridge. And then once we heard the announcement of the Livingston Avenue Bridge, the reconstruction came after we had already started the design phase of the project that or the funding that we had gotten back in 2020. So, DOT, we worked with DOT, they're asking us to please wait until that bridge is complete, and they will help us with some of the improvements, so we can add funding to already, build upon, to complete a better multi-path for the community. Yeah.
Because right
yeah,
now, all the construction
right.
equipment is here.
Right, you might see that.
Yeah, so to take a path through there now wouldn't be a good idea. We were in violation the other day because we didn't have our safety vests or our hard hats on when we were walking through the site. So our plan is to ask you to help us prioritize which projects are the most important and most beneficial to the city. There's descriptions of all of our projects out in the hallway. There's 18 of them. We're gonna give you 6 green dots to identify the projects that you think are the most important. and 2 red dots. If there's a project that you see in their mix that you don't think fits in Rensselaer, you can put a red dot on there. You don't have to use all of them, but, we did this yesterday at City Hall for a public forum as well. And people were running out of the green dots pretty quick. So you might wanna do is read all the projects and then find your favorites.
And I just wanna point out the handouts that you might have picked up, you know, at the front here, they are, each page is one of the projects proposed, so that goes with the DRI
Yeah.
But I
versus.
borrowed these handouts, cause I couldn't see any.
We might have gone through, I don't know if maybe
We'll
people have
get
a
you
couple,
one.
but I'm happy to send you one too, email you one as well.
No, you don't send me anything on email. I'm
Okay.
not gonna print it out for you,
We
you
can
print
mail
it
it.
out for me.
I
Or
can mail it
drop
to
it off
you,
here.
I'm happy to mail it to you as well, okay? You're very welcome. But I just, in terms of, that's the DRI, and then in here, what Labella has presented this morning, or this afternoon rather, those are other stickers and the other prioritization of the different goals that we have for our BOA, so that's. in this.
Fortunately, our stickers are different. so
Yes.
we won't get
And no
mixed up.
taking
Some
pictures
same of the
here.
colors, right, we'll know.
So does anyone have any questions about the downtown revitalization initiative or our project or the process for helping to identify? Yes.
Just about the Cralo area.
Yes.
I haven't heard a lot of specifics about what could be done with that area. So if you could, I don't know.
We have talked about, more historic ornamentation, street
Okay.
lamps that are more historic to the area. Keeping it
Green
historic is an
16
important
cents.
piece.
Okay.
Part of the historic walk,
Yes,
that
yeah.
to let people know that it's there, because a lot of people don't even realize that we have
Yeah.
this amazing historic.
It's super
Site
like
right there. It's
hidden,
super
definitely.
And we do
Yeah.
have some funding for an entryway, an arch, or some entryway at
Okay.
the beginning of the Cralo neighborhood, just to identify this is the historic area.
Okay.
Because right now,
That'd be
when you're
nice.
coming off the bridge, if you take a right, you don't realize you're in the historic area.
Yeah.
I was at the Fort Cralo Festival,
Yes,
and
Yeah.
I was coming away from it, and there was a woman coming from the train station.
Yep.
And she said, I had 2 hours to kill,
Uh-huh.
and I'm
Yes.
looking for,
Yes,
she was
there we
looking
go.
for, something
Yes.
historic
Yes.
that I didn't know about, but I told her the festival was right down there.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's great.
So
I did
that
the
kind
same
of
thing happened to
thing,
me. I was driving away and somebody asked me what's going on, and I said,
Yeah.
there's a historic
Right.
festival down there and free beer.
Right. Oh.
They were crafting their own beer.
Amen.
Yeah. Anything else?
Do they have some kind of timeline for what they're gonna do with 787 and the bridge and all that? Or is it just out
They
in
should
the
be,
ether
they're finishing up their
somewhere?
concept plans, this year, and they'll be announcing their, preferred design and alternate designs, I think by the end of this year. I think I just heard that this morning.
Is there any comment period for the Brown
The
project?
BOA, Brownfield Opportunity, yeah, that's right now.
Yeah, we
Is-
have, boards over here to
You
give
can do
feedback
something
on
similar
it.
to what happened yesterday over here on these boards, and then you can add extra comments.
Exactly.
So
Our
guys,
vision
sign
statement
it
is
in
also
here and
out
sign
in the
it
hall.
That's right.
There's some smaller papers with pictures of potential things for the park on the back table there.
Okay.
And Amy, myself, Mira, and Norabelle, and Mary are all gonna be here to answer questions as you're looking at the boards. If anything pops out at you that you need more information on.
I'd be more delighted to answer any
And
questions.
the mayor's here too, yes, thank you, Mayor, for coming.
We greatly appreciate your time today to come and help us out, thank you.
And Jane, thank you for giving us your
Yes,
space.
thank you.
Here.
Glad to have everybody here.
I believe that is right around here.
Can I grab the stickers?
I don't see it.